Sir Gawain, or Gawain and the Green Knight, is a 14th century alliterative poem which follows the titular Arthurian knight Sir Gawain through his adventures with the mysterious and fairy Green Knight. The story goes that on New Year's Eve, Camelot is celebrating Christmas time, and in the midst of their feast, a green man with a green horse, green skin, green hair, and green armor comes in bearing an axe in one hand and a branch of holly in the other. He challenges anyone in the room to the beheading game, saying, "You can behead me and you get this axe, but I get to return the blow in a year's time." None of the knights want to take him up on his offer until he accuses Arthur himself of cowardice, to which Gawain stands up and defends his king. Gawain chops off the Green Knight's head, and with horror they see the Green Knight pick it back up, put it back on his shoulders, and say, "I will meet you in the Green Chapel in a year." There are many motifs going through the story, Christmas time being a consistent one. In a year's time, it is Christmas again, and Gawain must ride out to meet the Green Knight and get his final blow. When he does, the Green Knight merely nicks him on the neck, just drawing a bit of blood, and Gawain stands back, saying, "You've done it, you've taken your shot, it's over, the game is over, I've won." To which the Green Knight thinks that this is very, very amusing, because he's laid another task for Gawain, one that Gawain does not know about. In Gawain's travels, he comes along the manor house of Lord Bertilac, who says he's heard all about Gawain's travels, his adventures, and invites him to stay with them until he has to ride to meet the Green Knight. In this, he proposes another game, a game of gains. Sir Bertilac will go and hunt, and whatever he hunts, he brings and gives to Gawain, and Gawain should give him whatever he finds in his manor house during the day. Gawain is not honest about this. He finds in the house, given by Lady Bertilac, a green magic sash, which is supposed to make him impenetrable to all harm. This he does not give to Lord Bertilac because he believes it'll save him from the Green Knight. So as the Green Knight is recounting this story, he reveals that it was him who was Bertilac all along, in disguise. So he knows of Gawain's failure, but he commends Gawain on doing as well as he could. Gawain is at first angry about this and demands that the Green Knight take an actual blow, that he makes this right, that he makes the game fair, that he restores his honor. To which the Green Knight simply looks and laughs at him, as if Gawain has any ability to control whether the Green Knight kills him or not. So Gawain rides back to Camelot and has a great adventure to tell the rest of the Knights of the Round Table. The story of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight has themes of Christmas in that of salvation, of mercy, of getting life that one possibly does not deserve. Throughout the story, Gawain has the Virgin Mary put upon his shield, on the inside of the shield, so the Virgin Mary is constantly looking at him, and on the outside is the pentangle, or the 5 points of a good Christian knight. So while Sir Gawain and the Green Knight doesn't have a ghost per se, it does have a supernatural fairy lord who can take his head off at will and put it back on, and it has all of the celebration and themes of Christmas within. This scene excerpt is from the introduction of the Green Knight. So Arthur and his Camelot knights are all celebrating New Year's at this time, when there is a large, abrupt knock at the door. Another noise that was new draw near on the sudden, so that their lord might have leave at this last to take food. For hardly had the music but a moment ended, and the first course in the court was, as custom, had been served. When there passed through the portals a perilous horseman, the mightiest on middle earth in measure of height, from his gorge to his girdle, so great, so square, and his loins and limbs so long and huge, that half a troll upon the earth I trow he was. But that the largest man alive, at least I declare him, and yet the seemliest for his size that could sit on a horse. For though in back and breast his body was grim, both in paunch and waist were properly slight, and in his features followed in his fashion so gay in mode. For at the hue men gaped aghast, and his face and form had showed, as a fey man fell he past, and green all over glowed. All of green were they made, both garments and man, a coat tight and close that clung to his sides, a rich robe above it all arrayed within, with fur finely trimmed, showing fair fringes, of handsome ermine gay, as his hood was also, that was lifted from his locks and laid on his shoulders, and trim hose tight drawn, of tincture alike, that clung to his calves and spear spurs below, of bright gold silk on broideries banded most richly, though unshod were his shanks, for shoeless he rode, and verily all his vestiture was verdure clear. Both the bars of his belt and bright stones beside, that were richly arranged in his array so fair, set on himself and on his saddle upon silk fabrics, it would be too hard to rehearse one half trifles that were embroidered upon them. Then Arthur before the high dais beheld this wonder, and freely with fair words, for fearless was he ever, saluted him, saying, Lord, to this lodging thou art welcome. The head of this household, Arthur my name is. Alight as thou lovest me, and linger, I pray thee. And what may thy wish be? In a while we shall learn. Nay, so help me, quoth the horseman, he hath that on high is throned. To pass any time in this place was no part of my errand. But since thy praises, prince, so proud are uplifted, and thy castle and courtiers are accounted the best, the stoutest in steel gear that on steeds may ride, most eager and honorable of the earth's people, valiant to vie in with other virtuous sports, and here is knighthood renowned, as is noised in my ears. 'Tis that has fetched me hither, by my faith, at this time. You may believe by this branch that I am bearing here, that I pass as one in peace, no peril seeking. For had I set forth to fight in fashion of war, I have a hauberk at home, and a helm also, a shield and a sharp spear shining brightly, and other weapons to wield too, as well I believe. But since I crave no combat, my clothes are softer. Yet if thou be so bold, as abroad is published, thou wilt grant thy goodness the game that I ask for by right. Then Arthur answered there, and said, Sir, noble knight, if battle thou seek thus bear, thou fail not here to fight. Nay, I wish for no warfare, on my word I tell thee. Here about these benches are but beardless children. Were I hasped in armor on a high charger, there is no man here to match me. Their might is so feeble. And so I crave this court only a Christmas pastime. Since it is Yule and New Year, and you are young here and merry, if any so hardy in this house here holds that he is, if so bold be his blood, or his brain be so wild, that he stoutly dare strike one stroke for another, then I will give him as my gift this guisarme costly, this axe, 'tis heavy enough to handle as he pleases. And I will abide the first brunt, here bear as I sit. If any fellow be so fierce as my faith to test, hither let him haste to me, and lay hold of this weapon. I hand it over forever. He can have it as his own, and I will stand a stroke from him, stock still on this floor, provided thou lay down this law, that I may deliver him another. And yet a respite I'll allow, till a year and a day go by. Come quick, and let's see now if any here dare reply. Up to this point, this episode is where Gawain has found the Green Knight and is about to get the second beheading done. Lightly his weapon he lifted, and let it down neatly, with the bent horn of the blade towards the neck that was bare. Though he hewed with a hammer swung, he hurt him no more than to snick him on one side and sever the skin. Though the fair fat sank the edge and the flesh entered, so that the shining blood over his shoulder was shed onto the earth, and when the good knight saw the gore that gleamed on the snow, he sprang out with spurning feet, a spear's length and more. In haste caught his helm, and on his head cast it. Under his fair shield he shot with a shake of his shoulders, brandished his bright sword, and boldly he spake. Never since as a man-child of his mother was born, was he ever on this earth so happy a man. Have done, sir, with thy dints, now deal me no more. I have stood from thee a stroke without strife on this spot, and if thou offered me others, I shall answer thee promptly, and give as good sign, and as grim, be assured, shall pay. But one stroke here's my due, as the covenant clear did say, that in Arthur's halls were drew, and so, good sir, now stay. From him the other stood off, and on his axe rested, held the haft to the ground, and on his head leaning, gazed at the good knight, as on the green he there strode, to see him standing so stout, so stern there and fearless, armed and unafraid, his heart it well pleased. Then merrily he spoke with a mighty voice, and loudly it rang, as to the Lord he said, Fearless knight on this field, so fierce do not be. No man here unmannerly hath thee maltreated, nor aught given thee not granted by agreement at court. A hack I thee vowed, and thou'st had it to so hold thee content. I remit thee the remnant of all rights I might claim. If I brisker had been, a buffet it may seem, I could have handed thee more harshly, and harm could have done thee. First I menaced thee in play with no more than a trial, and clove thee with no cleft. I had a claim to the faint, for the fast pact we affirmed in the first evening. And thou fairly and unfailingly didst faith with me keep. All thy gains thou me gavest as good man ought. The other trial for the morning, man, I thee tendered, when thou kissed my comely wife, and the kisses didst render, for the two here I offered, only to make harmless feints to make. The true shall truly repay, for no peril then need he quake. Thou didst fail on the third day, and so that tap now take. For it is my weed that thou wearest, that very woven girdle. My own wife it awarded thee, I wot well indeed. Now I am aware of thy kisses and thy courteous ways, and of thy wooing by my wife I worked that myself. I send her to test thee, and thou seemst to me truly the fair knight most faultless that ever set foot on earth. As a pearl then white peace is prized more highly, so is Gawain in good faith and other gallant knights. But in you lacked, sir, a little, and of loyalty came short. But that was for no artful wickedness, not for wooing either, but because you loved your own life, and the less do I blame you. The other stern knight in study then stood a long while, in such grief and disgust that he had grew in his heart, and the blood from his breast and his blush mingled, and he shrank into himself with shame at that speech. The first words on the field he found then to say were, Cursed be ye, coveting and cowardice also, in you is vileness and vice and virtue destroyeth. He took then the treacherous thing, and untying the knot, fiercely flung the belt at the feet of the knight. See there the falsifier, and foul be its fate. Though care for thy blow cowardice brought me, to consent to coveting, my true kind to forsake, which is free hand and faithful word that are fitting to knights. Now I am faulty and false, who afraid have ever been of treachery and troth breach, and too now my curse may bear. I confess, sir, here to you, all faulty has been my fare. Let me gain your grace anew, and after I will beware. Then the other man laughed, and lightly answered, I hold it heal you beyond doubt the harm that I had. Thou hast confessed thee so clean in acknowledging thine errors, and hast the penance plain to see from thy point of my blade, that I hold thee purged of that debt, made as pure and as clean, as hadst thou no ill deed since the day you were born. And I give thee the girdle with gold at its hems, for it is green like my gown. So, Sir Gawain, you may think of this contest when in the throng thou walkest among the princes of high praise. 'Twill be a plain reminder of the chance of the green chapel between chivalrous knights. And now you shall in this new year come anon to my house, and in our revels the rich rest of the season shall go. The Lord pressed him hard to wend, and said, My wife I know, we soon shall make you friend, who was once your bitter foe.